Good morning, everyone. This is Susan for SLC Aquatics coming to you live from the fish room. And what I have done is use one of my other live streams to actually do a little intro there because with StreamYard, I don't know how to set up those different screens. So hope you're all having a good day here on Friday. I believe it's January the 10th, 2020. Wow. How's everybody doing? I'm going to pull up my live stream, but I'm going to mute it. Mute it. Wow. I want to say hi to everybody who's in the chat. Amazing. Daryl Deemer. We have Turbo Fish. We have Darlene, Howard. I saw others come in. Cichlid King Aquatics. Hey, Rod. Hey, Susan. I'm at work right now, but just wanted to stop in and show some love. Thank you. Chevy Fish is in the house. Silly Susie. Hey, Silly Susie. Welcome, everybody, to the live stream. So I'm going to quit sharing because we are on StreamYards, and I have not purchased StreamYards. I'm still on the free version. So I have limited things that I can do, but I'm trying to be creative all the time. Today, I don't think I have a topic or a description or anything on this stream because a lot of times I don't remember if I schedule it through StreamYard or did I schedule it on YouTube. So when you schedule it on different places, you have different features, you have different effects. I don't use my OBS software when I use StreamYard. I could by sharing my screen, but that puts more work on the CPU, and my laptop is not dependable, even though it's been good. If I reboot before I go live, which I didn't reboot, but I brought it up from a off position. So anyway, hopefully everything goes well. This is Susan for SLC Aquatics, #FishFamMom, touching lives one fish at a time. I hope you all caught my video yesterday on experiment number 1 with substrates. Today, if everything's waking up now, so my fish room was pretty much dark when I came in here a few minutes ago, and undoubtedly there's been some power spikes or something, and timers get off and out of whack, and I still have, I think, 5 out of my 14, 15 aquariums down here that I have to still turn on manually because they're not plugged in to a timer outlet. So anyway, I'm just glancing around the fish room, making sure everything's good. I did about 5 water changes on yesterday, and was it yesterday or Wednesday? I didn't do any water change. Yeah, I did water changes yesterday. I have to look at my calendar. That's my notes. I have to get more organized. Okay, let me see what's going on because it seems like the chat's not moving. Or no one's saying anything. Everybody has said good morning. I released the video yesterday on experiment number 1 on substrates. And everybody knows that we've been chit-chatting with Father Fish and following some of his advice on returning back to the natural aquarium. He knows that most of my aquariums are gravel substrate, and he told me to just cap them with, I'm cooking pancakes. Awesome. I had a bowl of cereal and 2 cups of coffee. So he just told me to cap my substrate, my gravel, with 1 inch to 2 inches of gravel. And because I needed sand, excuse me. Let me recap. Play on words. He told me to go ahead and cap my gravel with 1 to 2 inches of sand. And because I needed black sand for my 55-gallon, I went ahead and bought two 50-pound bags of black uh, black sand. Excuse me. Received a text because I forgot to put my phone on silent. Um, he told me to go ahead and cap the gravel with 2 inches of sand, and I bought some black sandblasting sand, and there's been controversy over that subject. And even though I've received testimony of several that have used sandblasting sand with their bottom dwelling fish, Corydoras, I'm watching my Corydoras and my yo-yo loach very closely, even my mystery snails. Because sometimes when you're adding sand to an aquarium, you will have some pieces that actually float because the black sandblasting sand does have oils in it, but it's not so bad that it causes any harm to your fish. If it is a heavy presence of oil on the surface of your aquarium water, you can use a cheesecloth to actually absorb that oil and remove it from the surface. But if you have enough surface agitation with filtration and bubblers, etc., maybe even a wave maker, you won't have too many issues. At this time, I am going to flip my camera over to the 20-gallon aquarium that I'm talking about so that y'all can see what's going on there. Ta-da! As you see, I do have about 2 inches of gravel on the bottom that is old. This is an established aquarium. This aquarium has been set up at least 2 years, maybe longer, because I cannot remember when I moved these 20-gallon tanks down into this room before I converted it to a fish room. And it was a third bedroom. So as you see, the Cory cats are swimming around up front, happy-go-lucky, in spawning mode. Don't see, yeah, Henry is up in the right-hand corner. He loves swimming with the Corys. He loves that large female that I have. Well, that's not the largest female. That's the second largest female that I have in this aquarium. This is my half-moon mosaic guppy colony. As you see, whew, they are down quite a bit. I have sold a lot of my half-moon mosaics this past spring and fall and winter, and I've stopped selling them. They're considered out of stock right now until I rebuild this colony. I've been adding some of my juvenile males that have the round half-moon caudal fin features because you can get veil tails and delta tails out of this strain. You have to pretty much cull those males out. Some of the females you need to cull out too, but they're so large and heavy with fry, you don't know if they've bred with the males or not. So some of the older females are looking pretty poor right now. They're getting a little curved because their tails are getting heavy. Tank looks nice. Thanks, Jess Strip Granny. Hey, sweetheart. Good morning to you. And I guess I'll come back to me now. So I'm working on building up that colony. And that tank is experiment number 1, where I capped it the other day, I think 2 days ago, with 2 inches of the sandblasting black sand. And immediately, I don't know, it just seemed like the water column got purer. I did not raised my driftwood. I poured it on top of everything. So if there was any livestock down there that did not scatter, most of the livestock scatters out of the way when you're pouring in substrate like that. So I don't think I caught anything under there except maybe some ram's horn snails that may have gotten caught. But even though the sandblasting sand is a heavy sand, hey Danikin, good morning. Um, they are still able to crawl out of there. Um, and I spoke in the video that I posted yesterday on experiment 1 that because the new layer of sand does not have any nutrients in it, the corridors are not digging down in it to get any food. They're skimming across the surface of the sand. So I put extra fish flakes in it yesterday that would drop down to the surface of the new substrate, and the gravel underneath will be my anaerobic environment level that is still nourishing the roots of the plants. I am going to remove that cryptocorn out of the clay pot to plant it into the gravel. So at least get the roots down to the very bottom of the sand so that the roots will go on into the gravel. So that was probably something that I should have done prior to capping it. And but I didn't because I'm still learning. My hornswort was looking poor, but this morning it actually looks better. It looks like it's absorbing all of the nitrates out of the water column. And that's what I needed. These older aquariums that I have build up high levels of nitrate. And so when you have high levels, I'm talking 40 ppm and above. So when you have high levels of nitrates in your aquarium, it will cause the pH to drop into the acidic realm, because my pH usually is around 7.2. Hello, James from Illinois. Good morning. Hi, Susan. I'm running that same is 6 or the 12 10-gallon tanks and 20-gallon long I have in the room. Vanaski, hey Vanaski, I am running that same is 6 or the 12 10-gallon tanks and a 20-gallon long I have in the room. So you've got, are you saying, James, that you have gravel and capped with sand? Question mark. And they seem to be doing fine, but I have only been using it for about 8 months. Okay. So are you saying you're using the same sand? Hey, Chevy. So anyway, if y'all would like to see that aquarium again, I can switch it back over and y'all can look at it, because I have to make a little exit here for a minute. As I said, James says he's using the same sand, which is the black sandblasting sand. He said he's been using it for about 8 months, and there has not been any issues in his aquarium with his corridor. How are your corridor doing, James? And how is some of the fish that you took home of my mutt guppies? Have you kept any of them, or have you sold them into your local fish store? Turbo says, we have our GCCA swap on Sunday. Greg Sage will be there, and I wonder if Lucas can make it up from Indiana. Weather is bad. Yeah, y'all have to be careful traveling at this time of the year. Jess says, I have sand over dirt. I've done sand over gravel too, but I took the blasting sand out and replaced it. It would be too sharp for my geos, Bob said. Okay, your geophagus. Down the wormhole, D is in the house. Hey, D. Thanks, Daryl, for sharing my PayPal account. I have reactivated my Patreon account too. So if anybody wants to go over to patreon.com/Susan for SLC Aquatics and support $1 a month, or go to the second tier of, I think, $5 a month with incentives. So anyway, thank you for your love and your support. Chevy says Lucas isn't going to the swap this time. Well, thanks for that update, Chevy. Silly Susie says, I put sand I got from the golf course. LOL. My mystery snails burrowed down into it. That's awesome. I love watching things like that. But as you see, the Cory cats are in spawning mode this morning. And that is good because I need more Cory cats. I've sold my stock down and have to rebuild them as well. I don't have them in every tank anymore. I try to keep 6 in the tanks because they like to school. But sorry, I'm a busy lady. Coming back to me. So this is new for me because I've had either bare bottoms or gravel, and the 55 is the only aquarium that I've actually had black sand, because when I purchased the 55 gallon, I purchased it with 2 to 3 inches of black sand in it, and I do think it was the Carib Sea black sand, and they're spawning over there too. I have 3 Corridora in there, and I was thinking about adding my Yo-Yo Loach back over there, but he's actually having so much fun in the 20 gallon with the other Cory cats that I don't want to disturb him. When their fish are happy, I try to just let them stay happy. James says they're doing great. I have all of them. Your strains will be staying with me. I will only let offspring go to the stores. Okay, James, thank you. I can't wait to see some updated video on some of the color patterns and their caudal fins. And I know in your water being harder, I believe you said, they're going to really, they're going to fare well. Mine goes from 7.2 to acidic range sometimes, like I said, because my nitrates get too high. And then I am waiting for a hang on the back filter to come back into my 29 gallon. Right now they're running on the sponge filter and that DIY floating media. JN Aquarium, hey, how are you doing? At work, just popping in for support. Dropped you a like. Thank you so much. We got 14 viewing right now, and I appreciate that. I'm hoping that you all are gathering some information, because I'm going to share some of the chat on the screen. I forgot. I'm going to share Turbo Fish's announcement of the GCCA swap on Sunday, and Greg Sage will be there. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Turbo Fish, Greg Sage is the guy who does all bare bottom aquariums, and his plants are in pots with substrate, if I'm correct. Is that how he does? And just Shrimp Granny, she says she has sand over dirt, and I've done sand over gravel too, but she took her sand blasting sand out of the aquarium and replaced it. And because Bob says it would be too sharp for her geos. And Daryl Deemer was sharing my PayPal if you would like to support my channel. Danikin's in here, and Chevy, and Jess, and Silly Susie. She said she put sand from the golf course in. And, you know, Father Fish says, you know, watch some of his videos on the type of sand and substrate he says to put in his aquariums. Darlene says she needs Corey's, and they are one of her favorites. I do have in the aquarium behind me, Darlene, a breeding trio that can go. And I sell my breeding trios for $15. That's one female and two males. They breed in reverse trios from freshwater guppies and mollies and such. Mark, Big Easy Support Group, is in the house. Hello, Mark. Good morning. God morning to you. And let me see. I'm going to put some of my banners up while I'm talking. I'm pretty soon going to be starting on the February hashtag FishFam community newsletter. I have several articles. I just need fillers now. I need pictures. I need, if you want to advertise any fish related, businesses, I think I may feature Bob Steenfott and Dan's Fish Get Gills. I may feature those two businesses this February newsletter. If anybody knows, I need to get with Anna's Hobbies, and get her to do me another talking fish video. Those are adorable. I can use some family-friendly memes. What else? I'll probably be doing some kind of puzzle, a crossword puzzle or a word search. Y'all need to let me know if you're enjoying the crossword puzzles and the word search or not. I have some awesome writers, Ed Young, Rockford Fish Keeping, Chewy Ltd. I'm going to go through a bag and just select channel shout outs. Thank you, Daryl, for finding my Patreon. Here's my Patreon link, everyone, if you would like to support Susan for SLC Aquatics for $1 a month and keep me on YouTube and keep my fish fed and help me pay for the website slcaquatics.org, because that is a community website. You can go there and look at the resource page and connect with different fish keepers in the community that you may not even be aware of. So we're still talking substrates. We're still talking, still having issues in my 55, but I'm trying to feed my rainbow fish more. And even though a few of them did have full bellies, a few of them were really looking skinny. So got some new medicated flakes in. And if I can grab them right quick, where are they? I buy my medicated flakes from Dina at Everything Aquatic, and I was feeding them the duo medicated flakes, but I ordered the anti-parasite quad flake, and it is to be offered for 10 to 14 days as their only food source. Repeated in 3 weeks to ensure newly hatched parasites are dealt with to break their cycle. The active ingredients is prazoquantel, levomycin, Epsom salt, and garlic. They're effective against a wide variety of parasites, and of course, wash your hands after feeding. And I use a measuring spoon to actually feed. So if anybody's interested in ordering medicated fish flakes, this is the route to go. And even though it says quad flake, it has the two meds in it, praziquantel and the lavomycin. The lavomycin I've used before for camellianus worms. I don't see any stringy poo. I do see something on the surface of some of their scales, like maybe a bacterial growth or a fluke here and there. So I'm working on that. I'm actually still feeding them a little bit of in between the medicated flakes. I'm not using completely flake only. James says, I have to run. Please tell Rod I said hi. Take care. Best kept secret, Susan rocks. Thank you, James. And remember him in prayer. He lost his sister in Huntsville. So the family is grieving. But she was a Christian, so everything's well. Thank you, James. Love you. Later. Um, I've got an order going out next week of the American green guppies. Don't have a camera on them right now. They're doing well. Good colony growth. Will those hurt my snails? No. They dwell together. What kind of snails do you have, silly Susie? Are you talking about the Corydoras? Do I have to scroll up to see what silly Susie was talking about? I put sand I got from the golf course. My mystery snails burrowed down in it. No. If your mystery snails burrow down in it, they are enjoying going after food. You might want to drop some food in for them, but that's what they're for. That's what that sand layer is for. Now, the sandblasting sand is heavier sand and coarser sand, so it does limit who bores down in it. So I might even start getting some snails that are known for burrowing, like the MTS. Y'all help me out. My mind's blank. Trumpet snails. Malaysian trumpet snails. Daniken says, well, Susan, I have to go as well, and I have a job now as of yesterday. LOL. Back to the grind. Have a great day. Thank you, Daniken. Have a blessed day. And hope this job goes well for you and brings in some moolah. Aquaticness. Hey, Vanessa. How you doing? We're talking substrate experiment 1 that I released yesterday. Some had questions of whether or not corridors or sand will hurt their mystery snails, and they all dwell together fine in my aquariums. Jess says keep an eye out on the Corey's barbels. I am, Jess. Daily watching them. It's almost like they they know to be careful. They're grooming the surface very gently, and it's almost like in a heavy rain, the heavy rains washed in some coarser substrate and cleaned out. You know how nature does when they have a lot of the creek around my house is really clear and shallow and has a lot of pebbles and stones and sharp glass edges and stuff like that in it. And then in a storm, the water level rises and it gets really muddy. So there's a lot of sediment in the water column, and you would think the fish would drown. And some say they do, but I've never seen any dead fish after a storm. And what happens is the sediments and things, particles that are in the water column during the storm, once the water levels recede, those sediments lay down. It's just like Father Fish says, cap the gravel with fresh sand. And it brings in new nutrients. It brings in another layer to cover the anaerobic, the aerobic and the anaerobic levels that are within that first substrate. I would love to write articles, Dee says, so not good at sitting for that. You just need to sit down and record yourself in your fish room talking about your fish room. Talk out loud to yourself and send it to me, because I can delete the video. I can, it takes time to translate it into a document, but you know, short stories. Do a little short story when you got started in the fish hobby, or how you acquired this species and how you have handled, how long have you had that species, and trying new species. Just do a little short story. Aquatic Nest says, we have lots of cories in our tanks with sand. Yes, Vanessa, that's great. My issue is the sandblasting sand. It's controversial in the fish hobby to have bottom-dwelling critters on top of sandblasting sand. So over time, we do know that nature has its way, and I may end up capping the sandblasting sand with a finer sand, like a pool filter sand later on. So it's going to be a colorful substrate when I get through with it. Brian at Rockford Fish Keeping, good morning. There has to be a program or an app to transcribe. Yeah, or I can listen and dictate. So that's what I do a lot of times, is listen and dictate, because I love typing. Jess Shrimp Granny says, yeah, you do use blasting sand. That's right. And that's the difference in this controversial topic on substrates. Even though I'm following Father Fish's program, it's just something that I will be observant of, because it's something new for my fish. And I'll let y'all that are just chiming in take a look at the tank that I'm talking about. It's my 20-gallon, and they've had gravel for years, and it's got a good mulm in the bottom and going, and the plants are doing well, even though I've taken out a lot of plants and I capped it with 2 inches of black sandblasting sand the other day, and did another water change. And anyway, everything seems to be going well. Rockford Fish Keeping says, oh, and no more talking about storms. I'm not under a warning, not a watch anymore. Great. And I really, it's coming here, Rockford Fish Keeping. We've got high winds today, and then Saturday, today's Friday, Saturday, we're under severe threats. So Appreciate your prayers and good thoughts. And everybody stay safe. You know how to hunker down. You see, the Cory cats are in spawning mode. We have a male and a female spawning right now. And in the lower left-hand corner, I know the camera, I wish there was a way I could zoom in. I don't have that feature on this program. So the theory is don't gravel vac, to just fill your tank with gravel. Rockford fish keeping, no. It's best to start with an inch of dirt that has other additives added into it. If you'll watch Father Fish's videos, he shows you some of the things that he puts in his dirt, and he mixes it and he wets it and he lets it sit overnight before adding it to a bare bottom aquarium. And then you cap it with 2 inches of fine to medium sand. And he suggests the pool filter sand or the silica sand. And then you put a couple rocks in, and then the next day you plant your plants. You plant it heavily with plants, because in the dirt that you're putting underneath the sand, you've added nutrients for the plants. You cap that with 2 inches of silica sand. You decorate with a few rocks and driftwood and lots of plants. And this is a process. This is over days. And you haven't added any fish. Now, in an aquarium that has fish and your substrate is old and you haven't vacuumed your substrate out and you've let the nutrients grow within that pocket of substrate, then you can cap it with 1 inch or 2 of sand. And he said you will have immediate results in your water column. And I haven't done a water test yet, but I will be doing a water test. I should have done a water test before, but we already knew in the 55 gallon that my pH was 7.9 and my ammonia was 0.25. I did a 50% water change, and I've added 1 inch of sand. So I'm going today to do water testing. Down the wormhole says, today is our last warm day, -6 Celsius. Tomorrow is -26. Stay safe, Chevy. Yes, flood warnings, then Chevy said. Geo spit sand through their gills, so that's why I switched it out. I understand, Jesse. I wasn't familiar with Geophagus sand sifters, so that makes sense to me. And I guess it does. You really should do your research according to the livestocks that you have, because when I interviewed Father Fish on the sands to put in on the caps, I did ask him about the cichlids that are sand sifters, and I think that's when he suggested using the silica sand. He said as deep as you could get it for those, I think up to 6 inches of sand, he said. So because they'll sift all the way down to the bottom of the glass. Aquatic Nest says, we do a few tanks with sand that isn't blasting as of last week. Thank you, Vanessa. Tell us. We'll be watching for reports and updates on your aquariums with that, what is it, pool filter sand or sandblasting sand. Daniel Keeping Fish, hello. How are you doing this morning? Chevy says, thanks to Dee. I will be going to the GCCA and the CLS Sunday, so I hope my car is good to me. Yes, Chevy Fish, please be careful and be safe. Enjoy those trips. Jess says, I didn't know I could keep them in that tank when I set it up. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we're all ever learning and coming to knowledge and understanding of how nature is, how our livestock is. Um, some of our fish, I remember I used to have coolie loaches and in my 55-gallon, and I never saw the coolie loaches. And then I pulled out a couple plants, and they were like 3 or 4 of them all wrapped around the roots of the plants. And of course, that startled them out of their hiding place. Daniel says, "Hey Susan, I'm great, thank you. Started my weekend already, and hope you are fine also." Yes, Daniel, thank you. And we're doing well. We're discussing the experiment 1 in my 20-gallon tank, where I capped 2 inches of old gravel, and I think that needs to be brought up. It's not new gravel; it's old gravel. It's been there a couple years. I've only vacuumed the front part of that substrate due to the mold showing up in the glass, and I didn't want the mold to show in the glass. And then I found out that the mold is not necessarily bad as long as you don't disturb it. He says never, 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 never disturb your substrate. And even when I do water changes now, I try not to disturb the substrate. And if the substrate becomes filthy, sometimes I might kick a little bit of the surface stuff up without going into the substrate to get the loose stuff on top. And then he'll just, Father Fish says, well, just cap it with another inch of sand. And so we're experimenting with his methods and still educating myself on, not just do what he's telling me to do, but understand why he's telling me to do it. He says you don't want those particles in the water column at all. And when you cap it with sand, you're trapping those particles under that layer of sand, causing the bacteria, the process of life, to actually take care of itself in the water column. I also have sponge filters and hang on the back filters in those aquariums. And eventually I may go to just sponge filters and take the hang on the backs off. Silly Susie says, Aquatic Nest says, good to see you were live. Thank you, sweetheart. Oops is a famous work in my fish room down the wormhole. It's a famous word in your fish room. Oops. I say, oh, daggone it. I knew better. But Silly Susan says, I wonder for the sand sifters, maybe put your sand down about 2 inches. Put a layer of tile of some sort, then another 2 or 3 inches of sand. Well, the purpose, we really don't want to put tile in between those layers, Susie, because we're wanting the layers to be able to breathe. The upper 2 inches needs to breathe, so to allow the good beneficial bacteria to get down into that anaerobic level. Even though we're not disturbing those layers, there is a whole world of life underneath the substrate, and you want to allow that upper layers to be able to breathe. That's why I need some probably some snails that will actually go burrow into the substrate. Daniel Keeping Fish says, yeah, let me see, was a nice treat for me too when I finished early work there, Vanessa, catching you guys all here. Nice start to the weekend. Thank you, Daniel. And then, all right, I'm going to switch cameras again, guys, because I have to step out again. So this is the 20-gallon aquarium that I'm talking about. I'm going to mute my mic for right now. All right, I'm back. Thanks for holding out. And this is the tank that we're talking about. Chewy LTD is in the house. Hey, Chewy. In the case of marine and some freshwater aquariums, the deeper the sand, the more possibility of the methane gas and other gas buildup. That's true. You have to understand the chemical compounds and the life that is going on. And then there is a point. I think Father Fish, he'd have to be in the chat to explain that there is a point of death that happens in that lower substrate. And he said there is a time and a period that you will have to eventually, after years, he said 5 and 10 years, these substrates would live and function. But there comes a time that you will have to break that down or replace some of that substrate. And that's when I personally would advise removing your livestock before you do that substrate change, to me, because otherwise you're going to release such poisonous gases that you're going to have a large stock of death. So, and if I'm wrong, y'all correct me, because I'm still learning. I even did a narrative last night for Chewy on what water is. And when you understand what water is, it just opens up another learning, when you learn what water is. And now we're studying on what the substrate is. And when you understand how they work together and how nature works in that substrate, the microorganisms, the protozoans, the one cell organisms, the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, the detritus worms, the life that actually goes into that substrate. And if you overfeed your aquarium, eventually you're going to see these little white worms crawling up the glass, going towards the surface for oxygen, because the nutrients that's in the substrate there's become an imbalance in your water column, and what's going into that substrate is too much ammonia, too much nitrites, too much bacteria building up, to where the bacteria is robbing the detritus of its oxygen. There's just all kinds of life cycle that goes on in that substrate. Let me see what's going on here. I missed it. Chewy said, and the more chance of having bad bacteria issues that can affect long-finned fish as well as fish health. Right. And what Father Fish is trying to explain, he doesn't feed his fish every day. He does not. And I watched his video the other day where he was even feeding frozen ground chicken to all of his fish. Believe me, it was exciting to watch. But he did not mention in his in his video, he doesn't do that every day. That's just like when I feed my fish live foods. They don't get fed live foods every day, because some of that live food is going to get missed in the feeding, and it's going to drop to the bottom of the aquarium. It's going to lay in the plants, and uneaten food, fresh food like that, will mold, and it will cause another issue in the water column. So that's why we remove uneaten foods, because the bacteria and things in the aquarium cannot break it down fast enough to not cause a rise in ammonia, a rise in nitrites, and eventually you'll just get an imbalance in your aquarium if we overfeed our fish. There's a learning curve that goes on in the fish room, just like maybe the issue that's going on with my rainbows right now. may be a bunch of things going on. I may have underfed them. I may have lowered the temperature too much. I may have not done enough water changes. I might have too much current. I may have not enough current. So I'm still learning what is going on with my rainbows. So it's an ever learning curve. Your input, Sand Creek Aquatics is here. Hello, Sand Creeks. I need motivation today. Well, we're here to build you up, Sand Creek. If you've had losses, we want to let you know, do a refresh, start over, sit back, listen, tell us what's going on in your fish room. And there's plenty of people here that will bring forth the motivation. Tanks look great, Susan. Thank you, Vanessa. Chewy says, and the more chance of having bad bacteria issues that can affect long-fin fish. Okay, I'm going to put that on the screen because we're still talking about capping your substrates with 1 to 2 inches of sand and how you do not disturb that substrate. You want to plant plenty of plants. Now, if you don't use any fresh plants in your aquarium, please do not cap your aquarium substrate, and please do clean your substrate, okay? You have to get all of the facts together before you start following instructions like, well, Susan said to put dirt and to cap it with sand. If you don't have live plants in your aquarium, don't do this option. There's so many different options of doing your fish aquarium, and you've got to understand why we're doing this. And I don't have all the answers. I think Father Fish is going through a procedure today, so please remember him in prayer today. I think his catheterization was today, so we're praying for everything to go well and for him to even feel better. Sand Creek Aquatics. Darlene says, I'm cycling to a 16-gallon bow front, a 20 long, and a 10-gallon, and would love to get with you on the cories and some guppies also. Darlene, you know I'm here. I leave here in a few minutes to go get my son from dialysis. He takes dialysis 3 days a week, but there's room for you. There's room for you, dear. And I would love to get with you. Right now, my main strains are building their colonies, but my mutt guppies are available. So, and I can probably spare 1 breeding trio of cory cats. Okay. So we'll get together, Darlene. I'll message you when I'm ready. Hey, I just became one of your Patreons. Thank you so much, Darlene. Chevy, let's see. Thank you so much for your support, Darlene. Chevy Fish says, also, don't breathe the gases when you break down deep sand beds after 5 to 8 years. They are very toxic. Yes, you really need to be careful, Chevy says. And I'm going to put that on the screen as well. Darlene, Patreon. I understand what you're saying. Big City Bettas, Amber is in the house. Hey, Amber, how are you doing today? Daniel Keeping Fish is saying hi. Chewy says planaria. And that can happen in aquariums that have no substrate. That's true. If the planaria, I understand, can come from your fish's feces, detritus. If your fish have worms, you have not dewormed your fish when you get them in. That's why Corey at Aquarium Co-op, when he does his quarantine, he has his formula: General Cure, erythromycin, and Icex. That's Corey's formula. That's not the die-hard way of doing anything. That's Corey's formula. And you can follow his formula. You can follow my formula. You can follow Greg Sage's formula. etc., etc. There are so many options. We reach out to those that are more experienced who have done this, and Father Fish gives us examples of 5 and 10 years. He has been doing over 70 years of fish. If you want to follow his procedures, then try his procedures if you want to, but do it gathering all of the information, just like oh, I can't think of her name, Diana Wallstead. She is known for the dirted aquarium. Sand Creek Aquatics, fill us in on what you need, and we'll be glad to try to help you. Chevy Fish says, I don't do deep sand beds for that toxic reason. I put my plants in pots that can be removed for rejuvenating the dirt. And Greg Sage does the same thing. Greg Sage, I believe, has the bare bottom aquariums. He puts all of his live plants in pots so he can actually move them from aquarium to aquarium, or he can reseed. And, there's all kinds of reasons. If you need some SLC merch, thank you, Daryl, for my Zazzle store. Check it out. They have some great sales going on right now, 40% off. And I have 16 plus items in my store. So go get you some SLC Aquatics merch. Thank you so much. Okay, Sand Creek Aquatics. I think I'm going to cap sand with gravel. All right, Sand Creek Aquatics. If you're going to do that, follow the procedure that Father Fish suggests. And he has a series of videos. Go watch those series of videos over and over again. And Siri activated. Opportunity to play with a tank, overcome and learn Sand Creek. Good times. Thank you, Daniel, keeping fish. Chewy, let me see what Chewy says. You can cap it if you have digging cichlids, which means you probably do not have plants. That's true. You probably have rocks or maybe artificial plants in that aquarium because most cichlids dig. And like Father Fish has said, have at least 4 to 6 inches of sand, because those sand sifters are going to sift all the way down, and even the shellies are going to sift through at least the first 2 to 3 inches of your sand. And that keeps your sand breathing, okay? And that allows the beneficial bacteria and the gases exchange and all that good stuff going on that I don't know anything about, that I'm learning. Good morning, 54 Punchy. Good to have you in the house this morning. I will be ending this stream in about 5 to 10 minutes. So if there's any more questions that I can answer or any of the people in the chat can help you with, please feel free at this time to ask your questions. Thank you, Chewy. Filter systems can also breed planaria too. That's true. Thank you so much. Especially if you're using live rocks and filter media from other aquariums, you're bringing in different sources into your system. Silly Susie says, I feel like using antibiotics just because is not a good idea in an established tank. That's why a hospital tank is crucial for a deep sand bed tank. That's a good point there too, Susie, putting you up on the screen. Also, a lot of people don't like using antibiotics for a quarantine situation because antibiotics in high doses for long periods of time does kill your beneficial bacteria. So that causes another issue in your aquariums. You can recycle your aquarium, and it can also release ammonia and nitrites into your aquarium, into your water column, because of the die-off. Just like if you have plants, that's why you trim your plants. If you don't remove decaying plant matter, that can cause ammonia spikes and nitrite spikes and all other things. So keeping your aquarium natural, keeping it in balance, not overfeeding it, doing your regular water changes of 10 to 15 to 20% on a regular basis, keeps your aquarium cycled, keeps it healthy and happy. So there's a lot to learn, a lot that goes on in our aquariums. Aquatic Nest says, that's the wonderful thing of us all sharing. We can learn different ways to do things. Yes, and don't try anything new before you gather all of your information, because when things go bad, we get discouraged. We lose stock. And if you have purchased expensive fish, you don't want to upset their world and cause fish death. So educate yourself, ask people, reach out. These little types of chats here I just love, because I'm getting your input and you're getting my input. And the most important thing is fall on to experience. And if you want to do the fish setup the way Petco, PetSmart, I'm just using them as an example, as they suggest, then do it their way, troubleshoot with them. But if you are in a location that doesn't have a local fish store and it may be hard for you to reach them on the phone or to go in and visit them, reach out to these that are more experienced. And Corey is experienced with his methods at Aquarium Co-op. And he comes to you publicly to let you know what's been going on in his life for 15 years may suddenly stop working. So he's trying a different method. Or he just wants to try it out for an experiment purpose. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I did have nitrate issues in my 20 gallons. So I wanted to try something new. And I'm going to do some planting. I've got plants to borrow from other aquariums and just bring them into the tank. And, you know, I'm trying different things, and I'm going to document it with vlogs and come to you and give you my updates as much as possible. Sand Creek Aquatics says, don't need anything. Just left dialysis. Oh, I understand. I forgot that you go through that procedure as well. Lay back and relax. Hydrate yourself. Get you some nutrients. Thanks for hanging out with us. And yeah, we're going to bring forth some uplifting conversation for you today. I hope you've been catching some of it. Maple Street Aquatics is in the house. Hello, Brandon. Good to see you. Chewy says, a lot of the well-known breeders have no substrate in their aquariums. They usually have potted plants or a sump that is planted. And that's true, Chewy. And that's another issue that Father Fish brought up. He said, if like Lucas and Greg Sage and different breeders that have have no substrate, there is a sump that is doing that filtration for them. That's another good issue right there. If you want to go with no substrate, there has to either be a hang on the back optimized filter or a sump or a canister filter, something going on in your aquarium that is actually taking care of that filtration. You may be on an automatic water change system. There's just all kinds of things to consider. Daniel Keeping Fish, have a fun short day at work, Maple Street. Okay. Chevy says, when feeding live mosquito larvae, okay, this is a good point here. I run the net under very hot tap water before feeding them to my fish. Some will escape being eaten and hatch out in your home if not dispatched before being put in the tank. Got you. Got you. That's a good point right there. Um, and Chewy here is talking about antibiotics also affect our waterways in many different ways, and they do not go inert. That's why it takes a vet to get antibiotics. Now in Canada, there has been studies even that is affecting pathogens. Yeah, when you use high levels of antibiotics in your aquariums, it can really mess up our natural environments, because that water change that you're taking off is going somewhere. If it doesn't go into your waterways, your sewers, even if you pour it out into your soil, eventually that's going to get down into your water table and cause issues. So use antibiotics with caution. Chevy Fish says success is the culmination of hard work. I like this. Persistence and many failures. That's true. Many failures. And then you have to find out what works in your fish room or in your aquarium, and what level of maintenance. You know, Father Fish is trying to share a method with us that requires low maintenance. And the only time that it's going to require maintenance is if a problem comes up. And if a problem comes up, then how he has to handle it. You know, you might have total fish loss in that aquarium where that problem comes up. So that's where you do a total tear down, and then you start over. So there's been times in my fish room that I've had to totally tear down an aquarium because I could not. I remember the 29-gallon that I got. I used to dub it the aquarium of death. It still, for some reason, kills snails, and I do not know why. So there's got to be something in that water column, in that substrate, that is killing snails. And I do know that copper is a death for snails. And some snails say salt, high levels of salt. So there's no salt that I know of. And then some snails, salt causes them to breed. So I haven't found the problem in that aquarium for snails. My fish and my plants are thriving wonderfully. And my crayfish that I put in there died. So something, deadly to those crustaceans. Chewy says, yes, I've agreed with how Canada has done that you have to see a vet with every animal. Silly Susie says, gotta get to work lurking. Thanks for the awesome stream. Thank you. And I will be closing out here in a few minutes. Chewy says, you can do it with box and inside filtration, but you need to have 2 in the tank at one time, alternating the cleaning. That sounds good. I want to thank everyone for coming out and being with me this morning. We have 18 viewing. I don't know how many likes we have. I do appreciate the love and the support. And my special guest next Friday morning is going to be Carlos of the Royal Fish Aquatics. He is the one I sold some mosaics to, and I'm getting ready to send off some American greens to him. One last shot of the 20-gallon aquarium before I sign off here, just so that you all can see what's going on in that aquarium. Everybody's having fun. The corridors, the yo-yo loach are spawning. The guppies are pleased. Nobody's been fed this morning. And we do have a new drop of fry in there. And I have a sponge filter that's not working because the pump is doing something weird, and I haven't figured out what it's doing. But that's experiment 1. And I will be sharing that with you on a regular basis. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Remember those that are in harm's way, our family, fish family that's in Australia and Puerto Rico that's going through such devastation right now. And uh, have a nice time there, folks. Catch up with you later. Got to get ready for work. Thank you all so much. Susan for SLC Aquatics. Hashtag FishFamMom, touching lives one fish at a time.